They added Nick Pivetta in the last week as well, somebody who will step into their starting rotation. Does that make it more or less likely that Dylan Cease could be traded before opening day?
My first thought was more likely, but then I talked to some teams that have talked to the Padres, and they say no.
What does that mean then for somebody like Justin Turner, who I know his name has been rumored as a possibility for the Cubs? He's somebody who played third base in his younger days, but now is more primarily a first base / DH. I suppose in a pinch he might be able to handle third if needed, but he's 40 years old. So, but he's, you know what, he's still been a productive on base guy recently here. So is there any chance the Cubs could still be in the Justin Turner market?
Yeah, I think so. Now that a few others have dropped off, like Paul DeJong signed with the Nats, I think there's a chance Turner still is here. He might be haggling over a few dollars or whatnot. He might be wanting more playing time because he was playing last year for Seattle. They're not going to give him much here unless Shaw is not able or capable. So, Bush is going to play most days at first, but you're right. He'd be the first, third backup. I would not be surprised at all. I'm actually surprised they haven't brought someone in. I thought DeJong would have been as good as anyone because he's only 31 and he had 24 homers last year. But Turner is about the last guy that plays the corners that's available. So I'm not sure what the holdup is, or whatnot. But, really it's Shaw's job. It's Bush's job. Two young guys that really got to take the ball and run with it.
What's Cubs camp like these days for fans, Jess? Is it still like the hysteria that it was years and years ago, or is it kind of calmed down?
Not even close.
Really?
Yeah, not even close.
And what would you say the reason would be? Are we, or can you connect any dots here?
Yeah, I think it's a cumulative effect of just being right? Just being okay. And I will add one more thing, not having a ton of stars also. Even the one star, like if you just had Aaron Judge, but an average team, you'd have a lot of people. Now they do have Tucker, but he's new and he's about the quietest superstar you're going to find. He's not flamboyant in any way. His game's not even flamboyant. So I'm not sure that Tucker is going to be the big Mesa, Arizona draw. Now games start this weekend. I'm sure it'll be packed because it's a fun time. But you're talking about, I know I was like counting it up. Like this is why Jed could go and get a 12-year-old and didn't have 30 other 12-year-olds, begging to come over to the other side of the fence. There were about 20, 30 people this weekend over a weekend.
Really?
For full squads, maybe 30 or 40 people. So in the old days, Tommy, it was jammed. Every workout just jammed. Today, just to switch to the other side, I counted up White Sox fans, 21. There were 21 White Sox fans. Wow. They share the same facility as the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's quite striking, the difference. I mean, literally there's 1,000 fans on one side, and there were 21 on the White Sox side. But over the weekend, there weren't that many on the Cubs side. So it's kind of crazy to see that. They need to, sort of bring themselves back to sort of not just relevance, but like,
prominence for sure.
Yeah. Elite status draws those fans in spring training. They're not there yet.
What's going on at Sox camp?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It really is a different vibe. And this is what happens, obviously, when you sort of get rid of the old and you bring in the new. Now, there's three basic, veterans that are left over, and that's Luis Robert, Benintendi, and
Andrew Vaughn.
Andrew Vaughn, those three. Benintendi and Vaughn are going to do what they're going to do. Luis Roberts, the interesting one here. He held a 20-minute session with the media today, and I thought it was interesting. He didn't say anything like he wants to get out or anything like that. He was very professional. In fact, he even said it'd be great to be here if the team ever kind of came back to prominence, as we was just talking about with the Cubs. Like, he said the right things. He also said he wants to take care of his body a little bit earlier in the season, in the colder months. Wants to pull back a little bit on the bases or whatnot, just a little bit, because he's had 2 hip flexor strains over the last 3 or 4 years, along with other injuries. And he feels like early in the season during the colder months, it's been a problem. So I like that he's even thinking about it. Instead of just saying, I'm just going to do my job, he's thinking about playing the game a little bit smarter earlier, not really holding back, but just, on the colder days, just being a little bit more careful. But overall, Tom, it's a young group. And Colson Montgomery was front and center today. Here's the top prospect, has a wide open path to win the shortstop job. Here was his take on the vibe at camp.
I'm expecting a lot of opportunity and a lot of competition. That's kind of what Chris Getz has been saying, and Skip has also been saying the same thing. So I think it's very, very fortunate for this opportunity. A lot of opportunity, a lot of competition. That's basically all I got to say.
Sox fans have been hearing about you for a few years.
Yeah.
Are you pretty anxious to get on the opening day roster, or does it matter to you?
I feel like everybody's a little anxious, because if you want to be the best, you have to kind of envision yourself at the big league level. So, yeah, of course I want to see myself at the big league level, but also there's a lot of really good players also competing for jobs and things like that. So I'm going to respect whatever decision they have, but, I'm going to do whatever I can to, help the team win.
And that's the thing about being young and not having anything to do with last year. You don't have to flush it. You don't have to worry about it. In fact, the young players can take advantage of this team starting over, right? What were the two words? Opportunity and competition. And that's what, if you're a young player in the White Sox, all you're thinking about. You could care less about 121 losses. Benintendi had to talk about flushing last year and all that stuff. But most of these guys had nothing to do with last year, and that's where this team is right now.
And a palpable different vibe in their camp, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's why you had to move on from the manager. Like, you can't have baggage when you lose 121. Even Benintendi is sitting there answering those kinds of questions. He's not long for this team if he has a good first half. And Luis Robert could net you two really good prospects if he's healthy and has a good first half. This team has not really hit the bottom in terms of selling. Probably by July they will. And then they'll start that slow climb. But there is talent here, and Colson Montgomery's front and center along with some pitchers. Big shortstop. He's part of that sort of new era shortstops that are bigger. And he just has to be calm at the plate because he was chasing power a little bit too much in the minors last year. That whole be yourself type of thing. You're a top draft pick. Don't try to do two more. I think he makes the opening day roster.
Jesse Rogers talking about some potential Sox players who could be moved fairly early on. Jesse, another name that Sox fans are familiar with, Dylan Cease. He's still being rumored to potentially be traded by the San Diego Padres, but of course they added Nick Pivetta in the last week as well, somebody who will step into their starting rotation. Does that make it more or less likely that Dylan Cease could be traded before opening day?
My first thought was more likely, but then I talked to some teams that have talked to the Padres, and they say no. They've kind of pulled back. I think somehow they convinced ownership, and it didn't take a big leap to do this. We have a contender. Don't rip it apart. Let's actually add. I don't think they add Pivetta if they were going to subtract. They would have just subtracted salary instead of adding. So I don't think it's an addition than a subtraction. I could be wrong. I think the Padres are going for it, in the way they should with Machado, Tatis, and Bogarts in their prime. So, yeah, I think that's they have some ownership issues there, but I think Preller was able to convince them to stay the course. I don't think Cease is on the move.
Did you have dinner with anyone of note over the weekend?
No, nobody of note. Nobody.
No famous people for dinner? Nobody took you to dinner or anything?
No. I have another dinner tonight with it's just media guys. Paul Sullivan again, Patrick Mooney from The Athletic. Nobody interesting.
Do you guys like rip it up when you get together? Are we talking hamburgers at Jack in the Box, or are we like sitting down at a steakhouse?
It varies. So I'm going out with Nightingale and Ron Coomer on Wednesday. Those are a couple.
Well, you're making Coomer pay, right?
Right. Well, 100%. Yeah. And we're going to a steakhouse. When you're going with fellow scribes, it's usually somewhere in between Jack in the Box and Denny's. So,
okay.
No, actually, we're going to a nice baseball-oriented bar restaurant tonight where a lot of people hang out. Saw the Brewers manager there last year, so.
There was a time, maybe it's because I'm going all the way back to the WGN days where spring training was a destination. People would go on trips, vacations. It seems just like there has been a change in the approach for baseball fans.
No, I don't think so. I think it still is.
I think it's timing a little bit, Jess, because I think it's a little bit early.
Yes, games haven't started. Games haven't started.
Yeah, and as somebody who's seen, people who go out for spring training, I think a lot of it, especially if you have kids, is, centered around spring break.
Yeah.
So and that hits usually in March more so.
Exactly right. Make no mistake. In March, this area will be nuts. It will be brimming over with fans. The restaurants will be full. The whole thing. It has been a sleepy start because the Cubs and Sox aren't one of those teams. Now on the Dodgers side, it's not so sleepy. It's wide awake over there.
Did you catch the U.S. and Canada game? I know you're
only
a hockey
highlights.
guy.
Yeah, only highlights. Yeah, and it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. And let me say this: when you give a patriotic stance to something, players get pretty interested, right? I mean, you mentioned the baseball All-Star game. It's okay, but the home run derby has eclipsed the All-Star game itself in terms of interest, ratings, and stuff. But think about this, just using the sort of the patriotic aspect of it. What if you did Latin American descent players versus U.S. and Canadian players in the All-Star game in baseball? That would, it's just kind of like the WBC in July. I think that would be something. Like if you give them something to sort of, like East versus West, NL versus AL, whatever. But you give them something like our country versus yours, that gets players interested, and I think that's one of the reasons why the NHL did so well with that.
All right, Jesse. As always, appreciate it, man. I'm sure we'll
Enjoy dinner tonight.
Absolutely, Waddle. I will put it on your tab.
Done.
Okay.
See you, buddy.
Thanks,
Jesse
guys.
Rogers, as always, brought to you by your Chicago Toyota Dealer Association. Toyota, let's go.
Do I have